So the assignment is pretty vague. It just says write at least 10 unit tests. I'm not going to count. If you got 8, that's good. If you probably if you have 5 or 6, it depends on what code you wrote, how many tests you do. So I said 10, but as long as you make a realistic effort, I'll be fine. If you do 100, that's great too. But whatever works, basically. Do you guys know what unit testing is? Have you guys done it in other classes?
We did it in 172.
Yeah, in 172 we did it. It's almost, for those of you that took 172, it's almost exactly the same. It's if you took the 172 with Python. If you did it back further when it was C#, I didn't do unit testing. But it's almost the same as Python, what we did in the Django. Little tiny bit different. One of the things that I wanted to show is that I did upload some unit tests that go with that sales thing, and I think that's where I will go with this. I think I also uploaded some unit tests that went with the lock thing, but this is closer to what you did. So a unit test is basically you go through and you test every method to see if it returns the result that you expect. If you're really doing it thoroughly, you should also test to see what happens when you give it unexpected information. So you should test to see what makes it fail, how it fails. I'm not going to ask you to be that thorough.
So we're running this against the code we wrote.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you a little bit about it because the basic tests are pretty easy, even if your code doesn't function, right? Basically, does your Git return what it's supposed to? And we can do a lot of that. So I just wanted to show that was there. Now, I am going to do a couple of things here. One is I'm going to make it bigger. Is that readable from the back? Or do you need it up more? Need it a little more?
Were those samples in your blog or in GitHub?
They're at GitHub. I may put some in the blog too. The ones we do today, probably put in the blog. Okay, so I am going to add a new file. And I'm going to call it test.py. So by default, VS Code does not run tests. It does if you're in Django, but it doesn't here. So we need to go to this little gear in the corner. The lower, as I face it, the lower left-hand corner. And there's if you click on it, it has a little pop-up command, including command palette, which I didn't know existed for a while, but it's actually really useful. So the command palette, notice we did use it before when we did the git clone. Did we do that in here? I think we did. But what I want this time is Python unit test, or testing. Is it test? Discover all tests, configure tests. Actually, and there's one I want, not run yet. I want enable. Let's do configure. Unit test. And we want, so I'm clicking on all sorts of things. We want a pattern that looks like this. And it did find where my unit tests are. And notice it says run tests. I don't know if I can repeat that. Do you want me to go through that again?
Yes. Yeah. So I didn't get a full menu.
So you go there, you go to command palette. And then you want to do Python configure tests. So I actually typed in Python and then configure tests. And then you click on that, and this is actually, so we're doing unit test. Couple things is PyTest is another test library you can use, and Nose is another test library you can use too. I don't know why it's called Nose. But those are other test libraries. I've actually read that PyTest is a little better, but I know unit test, so that's what we're going with. And when I click on that, it asks you, when you do the root directory, it asks you to find the pattern where your tests are going to be, the file name pattern. So I chose test *.py, and it found my test py folder. It needs to identify it's not a folder, it's just a file. It needs to identify the file where the tests are going to be. I was a little worried that it would find test run py since I named that before I thought about it, but it didn't. It got the right one. And then I just clicked on that, and as I said, it has run tests. And it says no tests discovered, which of course not, I don't have any yet. Did you guys get there yet? Okay. So one of the things I need to do is I need to import unit test, which has 2 T's and not 2 N's. Okay, so we need to import unit test. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to test item first. So I will also, from item, import item. All right, because in the item here, in that file, there's a class named item. If you're used to Java, every class has to be in its own file, and every file has to have exactly the same name as the class. It's not the case in Python. So the things that I'm going to test here, I'm going to see if the string works, right? So it should return the item name. And I want to see if the price, if it returns the price, and if it returns the item name, which it actually does down here, and if we can get the number, right? So what it takes in as arguments is number, name, and price. And you can do this. This class doesn't have to work to test it, right? I mean, it doesn't have to do anything much. We're just testing the gets and the string. So I go back to the test, and I'm going to, I believe I just want to do def test. Let's test the item string first. Oh, I know what I need to do. Class item test, unit test, dot test case. That's what I need. We need to create a class. Does that make sense? This is just, again, it's like what, for those of you that did it in Django, it's just the same. Except that it's unit test instead of, what was the other one? Test case?
I think it was test case.
Yeah. And then I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to do a setup. So I'm going to do def. Let's do set up self. And in here, I'm going to create an example of an item. So I'm going to do, let's do it as self.item equals item. And so I need to give it a number, a name, and a price. What is an item 1 worth? Anybody have a good price? 30 bucks? Okay. that make sense? We just made an instance of an item. In Python, this is how you, the item is an instance of the class item. And that's just a setup. That's just so we have something to test. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say def test string, and it will take self as an argument. And I am going to return, actually I don't think it's returned. I think it's just self assert equal. You can see all those asserts there. So I'm going to assert that it's going to be equal, but there's also, I don't know what the difference between equal and equals is. But you can assert that something is false. You can assert that it's greater than that, or that it's greater than equal. You can assert that something is in a list. Something almost equals, I'd have to look those up to see what kind of range they're using. But there are lots of different asserts that you can do. But we're mostly going to do assert equal. And I'm going to assert equal that string item is equal to, and this should be self item, is equal to self.item name. Does that make sense? We said in our item, so if we look at item again, down in the string, we said that it would return when you cast this item object to string. That's what this is about. It will return the item name. So we're just seeing if that's true. So when I go to the test py, I will run this test. I'll just click on run this test. Up here, I'm going to do run all unit tests. No test run. Okay, let's look at the configuration again. So let's try that. I think that. Why is it not finding my tests? Oh, you know, I think I know why. Well, maybe not. Are you guys having similar issues? Should find that. Why is it not finding it? It has.
Mine run. They don't fail.
They failed, but it ran.
Well, they have run X's, which I presume is failed.
Yeah. What did you do different?
Nothing. I ran the test, run all unit tests.
Which I did.
And it ran.
See, where's the run command?
Should be down at the bottom.
So he saved to run?
That may be. I bet that is it. No, I still didn't find it. Why is it not finding it? It ran it this time. I chose a different pattern, the test asterisk instead of the test underscore. It puts this little decorator on here, run test, debug test. My test passed. So now there's other things you can do. I don't have the console right now, so let's do terminal, new terminal. And if I do, when I run the tests again, if I run the tests again, there should be output from it. And I forget how you do the output from tests. I don't want to do that. You should be able to see more than this. I'm going to go back. What?
What did you do different to get to that?
So I think I went to run all unit tests. Well, before I did that, I did configure unit tests, root directory, and I changed it to test asterisk .py. And then I ran all unit tests and it runs, but it should be showing me some output.
It says no test discovered.
Yeah, so did you change the configure?
Yes.
Now there's a couple of other things. If you're not in the root directory, one of the things that I had found is if you're buried too many folders deep, sometimes it has problems. So I think I actually, let's see if I can go into the, I might do a magnifier here. So in the documents, I did sale example, sale items, sales example. I think that was too deep. So I think I did, no, maybe, am I still that deep? Oh, I know what it was. It wasn't that I changed that directory. It was when you do file here, open folder. So again, I just got rid of my zoomer and I probably need it. You want to go deeper into it. You want to get to the final folder that has these files in it. Does that make sense? So my tests are not being found again.
That works.
That worked. You need to be closer to it. It's looking at the root directory. There's probably another way to do that. Now my tests are not working. So it has the test now, which I just, to run it, there's a thing down here that says run tests.
Is it run? It says that run test, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if it discovered the test, it'll say run test, debug test. Here. I'll help you do this. I'll come around and help you. It's a little tricky. You do have to be, as I discovered this too, you have to be closer to the root. Right? So when you open the folder, when we cloned this, it was like sale master, sale example, and then the files. You need to open VS Code at the innermost folder. Otherwise, it won't discover the tests. All right, so let's do a couple other little tests just to show you how the tests go. This isn't hard except for setting it up. That one is hard. So I'm going to do a test. Let's look at item again. So let's test get item number. So I'm going to say get item number. And I'm going to put a self in there. And basically, I am going to self dot assert equal. And then I will do self dot item dot get item number. And I'm going to assert that that's going to be 1. And where does that come from?
We hard-coded 1.
We hard-coded 1 in here, yeah. It's from this example. So we're saying when it gets the item number, it should return 1. So if I run tests and run all tests, it didn't give me my other test. Why? Why did, oh, you know why? I didn't save it. I do that a lot. Forget to save. Okay, so it ran it and it passed. I'm still not getting the output. There's a way to get output from the tests. Let's look at the Python. There it is. Python test log. Over here in the drop-down list. Although it's remembering, notice that it ran the program.
Mine ran, but didn't give me the check marks next to the run test or debug test on the one which is.
Did you save?
Yeah. It automatically ran when I saved.
And did you named it test underscore something?
I'm the same as you.
Huh. I'll look in a
My
minute.
test failed as well.
Did it say why it failed?
No, it just said that they were not equal. Weird.
And you had, when you did the thing up above, you did 1, right?
Yep.
And you did self down here?
It's passed into that. Yeah, I did self there.
I'll look in a minute.
Oh, I see. I forgot friends. I'm calling method.
All right. I'm going to do one more test here. We'll do just a couple more of these tests, and then I'll call it. Because it really is this easy. I mean, you can do testing of more interesting things, like the calculation or something like that. And then I'll come and see what's going on with some of these. So, like, let's do the price. And then I will, so it'd be almost exactly the same as this. So I just copied that, which is not always a good idea. It recognized it right away, but I'm going to get item price. And I'm going to change this to get item price. And the price I had was $30, so this should be and if I save that, see, it actually says run test, debug test, but it hasn't check marked it. So now if I run it again, I have 3 tests and they passed. But you see how easy the test could be. And again, if they're not passing the things, we can come look. It's probably some typo somewhere. But we tested the string, we tested the item number, we tested the price. Those are things for item. And then if you want to change it to another thing, let's do order item. So order item, first I'll look over here. And it takes an item in there, and then it takes a quantity. So I'm going to go to test.py. I'm going to create a new class. One thing, remember your indentation here. So I'm going to do class. We'll call it order item test. What you name the class doesn't matter, but it does have to have the unit test.test case. I'll see if I can lift this. Okay, and then I'm going to do a setup. And I have found, do not know why, because it really shouldn't matter much. It seems to like it set up spelled this way, and sometimes it doesn't see it if it's not spelled that way. So it might be an expectancy. And I'm going to set up, because it has 2 things. So I'm going to do an item. We could even, if you want, go steal our other item. All right, so we have an item. If you want to change something about it, you can. I think that's, so let's do a self dot, I'm going to just call it O item for an order item, equals order item. And it's not seeing that, and you know why? Because we have to import it. Oh, that won't work. Now it'll work. So if I do the parentheses now, it'll tell me what goes in there. So we need an item, so I'm going to do self.item. And I'm going to do quantity. So let's do 2 of them, whatever these items are. So again, that's just setting the stuff up for test. And does order item have a string? I don't think so. So we can get the item and we can get the self. Yours might be a little different, by the way. I added this return the item, I think. So if you don't have that, you might want to, if you're testing these. So I am going to, first we'll test quantity. And we need a underscore. And I like spaces. So I'm going to say self assert equal self O item dot get quantity, and we'll assume that that should be 2. And I think, oh, I need to save. And I'll run the tests again. And it passed, okay, so it matched. For the item, I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to do def test item self. And I'm going to say that item, maybe we should just say, well, I'm trying to think of a variable. I hate to do item again. Item equals self dot o item dot get item should be in there. And then I'm going to self assert equal self dot o item. Actually, let's just do self dot. It's just item, no self. Item dot. I'm going to put it to string. We're going to say that the string to the item should be item 1. Just to prove that we are getting the right item out of it. So the item, there's an item contained in order item, and there's a method to get that item back. So I'm getting that item, and then I'm just going to test that that item is indeed the same one as up here. Does that make sense? Because we supposedly passed it in plus the quantity. I have to save, and I'll run it. And so far, I'm doing good. So far, I have 5 for 5. I might do one more test just to show you something, and then we'll call it good, and I'll come debug. Questions on these? I mean, does this make sense? Now, the way you would do this if you were doing it for software is you would have to take every class, every method, test it in 2 or 3 different ways. And then one of the ways that they know that you would do it as you build, right? You do it with each new class, you'd build it. So you wouldn't do all your tests at once at the end. And then the goal would be that when you're done and all of your tests run, supposedly that means that you have your software works, right? That all your methods are producing the output that they're supposed to put out. And so a lot of businesses and a lot of jobs initially in programming are basically to create and run tests and evaluate the software. So, and even if you're building something, it's a good idea to test as you go. So I will do one more. We've done order item. If I look at order, order has a couple of different things. So it has an order item, a list of order items in it, and it has something to add order items, and it has a calculation that returns a payment object. That one is a little bit more tricky to test, and I will do it just to give you an example of it. Let's go to tests. So one of the things we need to do is we need to, from order, import order, because we need to get the underlying class. And then we also, from payment, import payment. Because it outputs a payment. That actually screwed me up at first. Because I kept trying to get the number out, but it actually doesn't return a number, it returns a payment object. Okay, so we got all of those. Right, so the gist of this is you have to import all the classes you want to test. with Python, if you wanted to, you could write all these classes in one file and just import that class, that file. But you'd still have to list all your tests. So this is going to be the last tests I do. And again, you would probably want to do more, but I'm actually almost up to 10 already. All right, I've got 5. Class, I'm going to say order test. And unit test dot test case. This is going to have a little bit more elaborate setup. So I'm going to say def setup and self. And then I'm going to, so for an order, we need an order item, right? So we're going to have to do, so I'm going to set up, seems like I had some troubles doing this before. I'm going to set up a couple of items. I'm going to do item 1. Items take, what, quantity? Actually, I need to do equal item. So we need a number, a name. What else do we need? A price? Yeah, what's the price for beer these days?
What can I have?
Not since I was a kid.
That's what you're thinking.
624 is pretty cheap too, I think.
Drink and stuff.
Well, actually, when I drink, I usually only buy 1 pint, and it's usually about that.
Oh, I thought what I can in the store.
Yeah. Item 2 equals item. We'll make it 2. So I'm going to do like just 2 of these, but I guess if you have beer, you might as well have chips. And like 425. You actually should use numbers that you can tell if it does the math right. But okay, so I'm going to do a couple of order items. Come on, it's interesting. So I'll just do order item 1 equals item 1, and we need a quantity, so we'll do 2 of those. And self dot order item equals, and this isn't right. And then I will do, yeah, item 2, and just do 1 of those.
Item 2 in the first reference to it on 30.
Oh, yes. Well, this one should be item
On the same line.
where, oh, this should be order item 2, yeah. Although they're actually distinct because one is. Okay, so then I'm going to make a new order. And I guess we could do self.order equals order. So it doesn't take any arguments, right? So I'm going to do self.order.add order items, and I'll add order item 1. Or self order item 1. And we'll do exactly the same. Order item 2. Okay, so we supposedly have an order with two order items. So we added the items to order items, we added the order items to order. So that's our setup. So there's a lot of setup there because there's a lot of things that we need, to do this. So then what I'm going to do, I think, what do we want to test? Let's look at order. There's only like two. There's just the calculate total. We could check and see if other things are. Let's see what happens. Let's just test the calculate total. So we'll do test calculate total and put self in there. So I'm going to do payment equals order, actually self.order, calc total, because it returns a payment. No, I don't want to take a stupid survey. And then I'm going to do self assert equal. This is a little bit tricky. String payment. Actually, what would it read? What are we going to get?
1248 plus 425 is 60.
Let's make that a 25 just to make life a little easier. So this would be, actually, let's make this 450. That'd make it $9. 9 times 9 plus 6 is 1525. And I'm also going to look at payment. Your payment today will be 1525, if I calculated that right. All right, see if that works. It's actually a little bit weird to try to compare strings like this. There's probably better ways to do that. So I'm going to run the tests. So item 1 is not defined. Where did I do item 1? Oh, you know why? Self dot. So it still didn't work. It doesn't like 1525. Your payment today will be $17 is not equal to your payment will be $15.25. Did we calculate that wrong?
3 chips is $9. 9 plus 625, technically almost 15.25.
So why is it getting $17?
Tax. Did you add tax? I don't think so.
I wonder if I go here.
Oh, it's doing that stuff.
I wonder if it's doing this one.
Cookies, right? 2 cookies is
10, and then this is
25. 3 though.
still isn't
So we'll do
17.
17.
This is,
I get 17.
where's 17 coming from? I'm not going to spend forever debugging it, but why is it 17?
Well, 17 is the cost of one apiece of each of the 225 items plus 2.5 of the $5 item. So if there's like
Doesn't help. Yeah.
There could just be like a really simple arithmetic bug. Because 17 is a linear combination of the prices of the things in that class.
Yeah, but it's still, well, let's look at the order. So I'm doing get item price.
415, 415.
Oh, it's
Flipping.
because you actually
It's 2 and 1.
calculated it wrong.
It's 2 and 1.
Because you did 2 of the 625 item and 1
2 of the 6
of
and
the
1.
more.
It's 2 beers, 1 chips. Somehow. I don't know if you calculated it.
If you go back into your test, you've got 2 of item 1.
Oh, 2 of the beers,
Yeah.
and not 2 of that.
So it's actually, it is actually 17.
Oh, okay.
I like your linear solution.
Yep.
That was great.
I didn't actually find I mean, she found where it was actually going wrong. I just noticed that it could very easily go wrong.
Still has a failure. Oh, I didn't
Number
say.
0.
Oh, I think does it prefer to list both cents digits?
You have
Um,
1 digit. Maybe.
Yeah, but that's actually what it told me that it equaled. See, it's okay now. I just hadn't saved.
Drinking too much beer. That's the problem.
Yeah, I haven't had a beer in months, but that's okay. Anyway, it's a little bit more I just wanted to show you that it's a little bit more complicated when you have to test something that has a lot of
The problem I'm running into when I'm trying to drag these methods for my own classes is my constructors take custom objects as parameters, and it seems like Python is actually passing an object into the constructor as passing each piece of data individually. Like you're getting an error that relates to the number of parameters that the constructors support.
Huh.
Where they should match in theory. They're like, for example, suppose you had an object that took an order as a parameter, and that was its only parameter, and you pass in order, and then it was like, well, 4 doesn't equal 1.
So in order to get something out, I mean, is it giving you an error on the parameter itself?
Yeah, well, the error is occurring on the line of the constructor call.
The init?
Yeah, the init. Because I mean, to my eyes, like I'm passing the correct number of parameters, but since it's breaking up each of the custom objects into its fields
shouldn't
and then
be
passing
doing
the
that.
fields individually, it creates an error every time.
It shouldn't be doing that. I mean, so, and you have a self every time, right?
Yeah.
So item is a bundle, so it should, I mean, it's an object.
So yeah, you're doing the same thing and it's working.
I don't know why it wouldn't. And when I do, so where else do I do that? In the inventory, which are done, actually that's not taking anything into the INI though. I think it's only the order that's taking the item. The order item takes the item in. But I usually haven't found that. It does bother me that you nowhere define what item is. I mean, we know it because we named it the same as this and that. But I could name this X and it would work.
Yeah.
You know, it interprets it as an object simply because we put an object in that place.
Yeah.
Which worries me. But having grown up on Java and C.
Well, so when I invoke a constructor and what if it's defined to take in like a particular kind of object is one of its parameters.
Yeah.
In my call, when I call init, I don't have to write itself in that time. I just write in the data that's going in.
Right. So
Just in the definition of the init, you have to include
include self, This is another thing I don't like about Python, although I'm getting more used to it. Because it doesn't have any class hierarchy in terms of what fields belong to the class, it defines the fields that belong to it with the self. So self indicates, so you have to pass in self, and self, anything marked with a self indicates that it belongs to the class. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So you don't have to, like when I do, I think in order, total here doesn't have self because it's only really, and payment. These are just relevant to this method.
They're just helping.
Yeah,
They're helping with memory allocation essentially.
right. So they're not, these things are not class level because they're not identified with self. They're just method level or function level.
Well, maybe I just have to have you look at this later.
Yeah, I could take a look, but to me, using self everywhere is a little bit awkward and strange.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
I think it's because Python originated as a function-based language,
Mm,
right? And classes were added to it to make
Yeah.
it more compatible with the rest of the world. And I like classes. I like working with classes a lot, actually. And Python classes are okay. There's just a couple of things that I quibble about. There's some, they don't fulfill the entire spectrum of object-oriented functionality, but pretty close.
What do they miss?
You can't do true polymorphism. I mean, there's a little bit of it. You can override string, right?
Mhm.
But in general, you can't override a method. You can't have two methods with the same name and different arguments
Oh, okay.
because it doesn't know what the arguments are.
Right. 'Cause it never
Yeah,
figured to like.
because like in Java, you could say int string. And you can't have any other override of that method that's int string. You could do int string string, or you could do int double string, and that would be a legitimate separate function. I mean, but because it doesn't know whether this is a string or an object until you put something in that place.
Means that method has to be uniquely named.
Yeah, it has to be uniquely named. So you can't do that kind. That's the one thing I think that it doesn't do. Is
Function
that
overloading.
overloading. I don't know. I haven't tried. It may be when you do string, it may be an overwrite. It probably is a sense that the string, it will use the string from the super, from the parent, unless there's a string function in that. I mean, I think it goes with the more local function with that name when you're doing inheritance. Does that make sense? I don't know. So you might be able to replace overwrite, but not necessarily overload. Those are real subtle things that don't matter a whole lot. Python is the second most popular language out there right now. So next to Java, it's actually more popular than Java probably, but Java is used more professionally. Python is really popular with scientists and mathematicians.
Oh yeah, they don't want to have to think about like, principles of software architecture, or they just want to.
Yeah,
print the data and have it.
I think the one reason it is really popular with scientists and mathematicians is that it's fast to write.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry, if you don't want to do classes, you don't have to do classes. You can just do functions, it's whatever works. Does the testing make sense to you? I can come around and I'll put this part in the blog, but it's also up on GitHub, these tests. And all you have to do is take a couple of your classes. Some of you wrote 3 or 4, some of you wrote 2. It doesn't matter. Just test the gets and the sets if nothing else, right? So if you have a class like item, most of you have a class like item. You can test the get item number, get item name, get item price. If you have a thing like a string, you can test the string function. You don't have to test a lot of how it works. You can if you want, but I'm not asking for a lot. Just want to give you a feel for what the tests are like. So let me kill the video, post this to the blog, and then I'll come help debug. And that's actually the last lecture for the quarter. We do have, I think, a presentation or two on Thursday. So you might come for that because I think they could be fun. And then we're done. So I can take work up, as I said, up through like ideally next Thursday. If it comes in Friday early in the morning, I can look at it. Otherwise, I will try to look at it, but I can't promise because I'll be on a train. And Amtrak is stingy with their wireless. Okay.
Okay.
Let me stop the video.